The storm raged across the empty highway, rain hitting the road like thousands of tiny bullets. Officer Daniel was finishing his shift when Shadow, his loyal German shepherd, suddenly perked up in the back seat, ears sharp, eyes locked ahead. Daniel followed his gaze and froze. Through the storm, Daniel spotted a family, 2 small children clinging to their parents, soaked, shivering, and walking along the desolate roadside. Something about them felt wrong. Terribly wrong. Shadow barked again, louder this time, as if begging Daniel to stop. Daniel had only seconds to decide what to do. He hit the brakes. He had no idea that stopping his car at that moment would change his life forever. Stay with us. This story will leave you speechless. Before we start, make sure to hit like and subscribe. And really, I'm curious, where are you watching from? Drop your country name in the comments. I love seeing how far our stories travel. Rain hammered against the patrol car like 1,000 tiny fists, each drop echoing in the emptiness of the highway. Officer Daniel Reed tightened his grip on the steering wheel, squinting past the streaking windshield as lightning flickered across the sky. Nights like these were quiet. Too quiet. Most people stayed home, sheltered from the violent storm tearing through the county. But not Shadow. The German shepherd sat alert in the passenger seat, ears twitching at every rumble of thunder, eyes scanning the darkened road as if searching for something only he could sense. Daniel glanced at him with a tired smile. "Long night, buddy, just a little more." Shadow didn't blink. He was focused, locked onto something in the distance. Daniel frowned. "What is it?" Before he could finish the question, Shadow suddenly sat upright, body tense, ears pointed forward like arrows. A low growl rose in his throat, not aggressive, but urgent. Warning. Daniel followed his gaze, and then he saw them. Through the sheets of rain, barely visible beneath the flickering flashes of lightning, a family walked along the shoulder of the highway. A man, soaked to the bone, cradled a young boy with one arm while gripping his daughter's hand with the other. Behind him, a woman staggered under the weight of a drenched duffel bag, her hair plastered to her face, her clothes clinging to her skin like cold, wet armor. They were shivering, exhausted, alone, in the middle of a storm that could kill someone in minutes. "What on earth?" Daniel whispered as he slowed the patrol car. Shadow pressed his nose to the window, whining, tail stiff, not wagging, not fearful, just alert, concerned. Daniel felt something tighten in his chest. Families didn't just walk down empty highways in weather like this, not unless something had gone terribly wrong. He flicked on the red and blue lights, casting the road in flashes of color. The father shielded his children instinctively, pulling them close. The mother flinched as the lightning cracked again, illuminating the fear etched into her face. "This isn't right," Daniel muttered. Shadow barked once, sharp, insistent. Daniel eased the car to the side and stepped out into the downpour. The cold rain hit him like needles, soaking through his uniform instantly. He raised a hand in reassurance. "Hey, are you all okay?" he called out over the roaring wind. No answer, only trembling bodies, and eyes filled with fear so deep it made Daniel's heart drop. Shadow stepped out beside him, fur-drenched but posture steady. Something was wrong with that family, and in that moment, Daniel knew. This storm wasn't the real danger. Daniel approached slowly, palms open to show he meant no harm. The storm whipped around them violently, the wind slicing through the night like a warning. The father stepped protectively in front of the children, his arms spread just enough to shield their small, trembling bodies. The boy clung to his leg, eyes wide and glassy, while the little girl hugged a soaked backpack to her chest as if it were the only safe thing left in the world. "It's okay," Daniel said over the thunder. "I'm here to help." The father didn't move. His clothes were drenched, his jaw tight, his expression torn between exhaustion and fear. The woman stood a few steps behind, her hair plastered to her face, her duffel bag slipping from her soaked fingers. She looked as though she couldn't decide whether to cry or collapse. Shadow stayed by Daniel's side, his stance firm and calm. He wasn't growling now. He was observing, reading the family the way only a trained K9 could. His tail hung low, his ears tilted forward, his entire body language saying the same thing Daniel felt. These people weren't dangerous. They were scared. "What are you doing out here?" Daniel asked, keeping his voice steady, gentle. "You shouldn't be on this road in weather like this." The mother finally spoke, her voice weak, trembling. "Please, we just need to get somewhere safe." Daniel's heart tightened. Safe from what? She hesitated, too long. Her eyes darted behind them, toward the dark stretch of highway swallowed by rain. Fear flickered across her face like lightning. "We can't go back," she whispered. "Please, just don't send us back." Daniel exchanged a look with Shadow, who gave a short, soft whine. The dog stepped closer, sniffing gently at the kids, who instinctively reached out to him despite their shaking hands. The little girl touched his wet fur, her voice cracking. "He's warm." The mother's breath hitched. Can you help us?" Daniel looked at the storm, at the road, at the trembling children pressed together under their father's arms. He didn't know what their story was. Not yet, but he didn't need the details to see the truth. They were running from something. Something real. Something dangerous. "You're getting in the car," Daniel said firmly. "All of you." The father blinked, shocked by the certainty in his voice. "Are you sure?" Daniel nodded. "No one should be out here tonight. Let's get you somewhere dry." Shadow barked once, agreement. And just like that, the first step was taken. The step that would change all of their lives. The family moved hesitantly toward the patrol car, their clothes dripping, their steps slow and unsteady. Thunder cracked again, illuminating the highway in a blinding flash. The little girl flinched and grabbed her mother's hand while the boy pressed closer to his father's leg. Shadow walked beside them, but something in his behavior shifted. He didn't merely escort them. He circled them, slowly, carefully, protectively. Daniel noticed immediately. Shadow's ears were angled forward, his tail rigid but not raised, his nose twitching non-stop. Every few seconds he paused to sniff the air, then resumed circling as if mapping out an invisible perimeter around the family. "Easy, boy," Daniel murmured. But Shadow wasn't being aggressive. He wasn't warning them about the family. He was warning the family about something else. The father hesitated before reaching the car door. "Is he dangerous?" he asked, voice shaky. Daniel shook his head. "No. If he wanted to hurt you, you'd know. He's reading the situation." The man swallowed. "Reading us?" Daniel studied Shadow more closely. The dog's movement was deliberate, precise. Nothing like the controlled discipline he showed during regular patrols. This was instinct. He sniffed the boy's backpack, then the mother's duffel bag, then the father's hands. After each inspection, he backed away, paced, then circled again. Finally, he stopped beside the children, pressing his body gently against them, like a shield. The girl blinked up at him. "He's hugging us," she whispered. Shadow lowered his head, nudging her hand softly. The boy reached out and touched the dog's fur, his fingers trembling. Shadow didn't move away. Daniel's stomach tightened. His K9 partner had never behaved like this with strangers, not even with other officers. The trust Shadow was showing the children wasn't instinctive. It was protective. The mother wiped rain from her eyes. "Why is he acting like that?" Daniel hesitated. "He thinks you're in danger." The father stiffened. We're not." Shadow suddenly whipped his head toward the dark stretch of highway behind them. A deep, rumbling growl rose from his chest, not at the family, not at Daniel, but at something unseen in the storm. Daniel's pulse jumped. "Shadow? What do you see?" The dog stared into the distance, the rain washing over his fur, lightning stretching across the clouds above him. His body went rigid. Growl, louder. Then he stepped forward, placing himself directly between the family and the empty road behind them. Daniel felt a chill colder than the rain, whatever this family was running from. Shadow sensed it was getting closer. Daniel opened the back door of the patrol car, the interior light flickering against the sheets of rain. "Get inside," he urged. "You'll warm up faster in there." The father hesitated only a moment before lifting his son into the car. The boy shivered violently, water dripping from his hair onto the seat. The little girl followed, clutching her backpack so tightly her knuckles turned white. The mother climbed in last, wincing as she shifted the weight of the duffel bag across her shoulder. As soon as the door shut, Shadow jumped into the front passenger seat but twisted around, eyes locked on the family through the metal grate. His breathing was sharp, focused. Daniel could feel his partner vibrating with tension. "That's not normal," Daniel muttered under his breath. The father leaned forward slightly. "We won't cause trouble, I promise. Just thank you for stopping." Daniel nodded but didn't answer. He walked quickly around the car, rain soaking through his uniform until it felt like a second skin. Once he slid into the driver's seat, Shadow immediately shifted, trying to position himself where he could keep the family in view and still watch the storm outside. The patrol car was warm compared to the outside, but the air inside felt thick, with fear, with uncertainty, with something else Daniel couldn't name yet. He turned toward the back. "My name's Officer Daniel Reed. This is Shadow. You're safe now. Tell me, where were you headed in weather like this?" The mother exchanged a quick, uneasy glance with the father. He avoided Daniel's eyes. We didn't have a destination." Daniel frowned. "You were walking on the highway in a lightning storm with 2 kids and no destination?" The man swallowed hard. "We just needed to get away." "From what?" Daniel pressed gently. Silence. Only the sound of the storm pounding on, the roof and the quick, uneven breaths of the children. Shadow let out a low whine, pushing his nose against the metal grate. Daniel sighed and shifted the car into drive. "Look, you don't have to tell me everything right now. First priority is getting you all dry and safe. We'll head to the nearest station and—" "No!" the mother burst out suddenly, her voice cracking like the lightning outside. Daniel jerked his head around. Shadow stiffened instantly, ears snapping upright. The mother's eyes were wide, desperate. "Please, not the station. Anyone but the station. They'll find us there." A cold pulse shot through Daniel's chest. "Who?" She didn't answer. Instead, she pulled the children close, her hands trembling uncontrollably. Shadow growled softly, not at her, but at the storm outside, his gaze fixed on the highway behind them as if expecting something to appear out of the darkness. Daniel's instincts screamed a warning. This wasn't just a stranded family. They were hiding from something very real, something close. And the storm outside wasn't the only threat closing in. Daniel kept one hand on the wheel, the other resting near the radio. Not to call for backup yet, but ready if things took a turn. The patrol car rumbled down the rain-soaked highway, wipers fighting a losing battle against the storm. The interior heater hummed softly, warming the air, though the tension remained ice-cold. Shadow didn't sit still. He shifted constantly. One moment watching the family, the next staring out the back window as if expecting headlights to appear. His tail lay flat against the seat, his chest rising and falling in fast, controlled breaths. He was on full alert. Daniel glanced into the rearview mirror. The family sat pressed together, shivering beneath emergency blankets. The mother's fingers trembled as she brushed wet hair away from her daughter's face. The boy leaned heavily against his father, eyelids drooping from exhaustion. But Daniel saw something else, something he couldn't ignore. Bruises, dark, fresh, scattered across the father's jawline, a cut on the mother's arm, deep enough to leave a scar, and the kids. Both had marks around their wrists, faint but unmistakable. His stomach tightened. "Did someone hurt you?" Daniel asked gently. The father inhaled sharply but didn't answer. The mother's hand froze midair. Shadow whined again, low and uneasy, turning his head sharply toward the road behind them. Daniel followed his gaze, nothing but rain and darkness. Still, the dog wouldn't look away. "Shadow senses something," Daniel said softly. "He's never wrong." The father's shoulders slumped, the weight of exhaustion pulling him down like gravity. He ran a shaking hand through his soaked hair. "We didn't want to involve the police," he whispered. "We just needed to disappear." Daniel's grip on the wheel tightened. "Disappear? From who?" The man opened his mouth, but the woman spoke first, her voice brittle, fragile. "The people we worked for." She looked down, clutching her daughter as if someone might snatch her away even now. "They'll come after us. They always do." Daniel frowned. "Who are they?" She shook her head. "You wouldn't believe us." "Try me," Daniel wanted to say. He'd seen enough in his 10 years as an officer to know that monsters didn't always hide in shadows. They hid in plain sight. Shadow suddenly barked, sharp, urgent, cutting through the air like a blade. He pressed his paws against the dashboard and growled toward the back window again. Daniel's pulse jumped. Something was behind them. He didn't see it yet, but Shadow did, and the family felt it deep in their bones, whatever they were running from. It wasn't far. Shadow's growl rumbled through the patrol car like distant thunder. Daniel glanced at the back window again. Nothing but the blur of rain and darkness. But he trusted Shadow more than any camera or mirror. If the dog sensed danger, it was there. He lowered his voice. "Talk to me. What kind of people are after you?" The father's jaw clenched. He stared down at his shaking hands, the knuckles scraped raw, the skin bruised. "We worked at a warehouse," he said quietly. "Storage and shipping. Long shifts, low pay, nothing special." The mother swallowed hard, her eyes red and puffy. It wasn't what it looked like. Daniel frowned. "Meaning?" She hesitated, as if pulling the truth out of her chest physically hurt. It was a front. For something else. Shadow growled again, shifting in his seat, ears locked backward toward the storm. Daniel felt the air thicken. The father continued, voice trembling. "Illegal things, dangerous things. At first, we didn't know. Nobody told us. We were just workers trying to feed our kids." The little girl whimpered, curling closer to her mother. Daniel softened his tone. "It's okay. You're safe right now. Take your time." The woman took a shaky breath. "But when we found out, when we saw what they were storing," she covered her mouth, fighting tears. "We tried to quit." Daniel nodded slowly. "Let me guess. They didn't like that. They threatened us," the father whispered. "Said they'd make an example out of us if we talked, that we belonged to them." Daniel's pulse quickened. He'd heard stories like this, but never while driving a patrol car through a storm with 2 terrified kids in the back seat. "What were they storing?" he asked quietly. The parents exchanged a broken look, one that said we shouldn't say this, but we have no choice now. "Weapons," the father whispered. "High grade, military level, crates stacked to the ceiling." Daniel stiffened. "And not just weapons," the mother added, voice cracking. "People." Daniel slammed the brakes. The patrol car skidded, slightly, tires sliding through the water before stabilizing. He stared into the rearview mirror, his heart pounding. "People?" he repeated, voice barely audible. She nodded. "Women, some barely older than teenagers, locked inside storage containers, drugged, beaten." Tears streamed down her cheeks. "We tried to help. We tried to get them out. But they caught us. They beat him." She touched the father's bruised jaw. "They would have killed us if we didn't run." Shadow barked sharply, snapping Daniel back to the road. His ears were pinned flat now, tail stiff, body pressed against the metal grate. He sensed something. Something closer. Daniel's voice dropped to a whisper. "Did anyone see you leave?" "Yes," the father said, his voice hollow. "They followed us. They always follow." A chill crawled up Daniel's spine. Shadow growled again, this time louder, deeper, because in the distance, beyond the curtain of rain, headlights appeared. And they were getting closer. The headlights cut through the storm like a blade, bright, sharp, too steady to be accidental. Daniel's chest tightened as the distant glow grew larger in the rearview mirror, slicing through sheets of rain that blurred the rest of the world into darkness. Shadow reacted first. He spun around in the passenger seat, paws planted firmly, ears rigid, a deep growl rolling from his chest like a warning siren. He didn't take his eyes off the approaching lights for a second. Daniel didn't need an explanation. Shadow had never misread danger. "Everyone stay down," Daniel ordered, his voice crisp. The mother immediately pulled the children lower, shielding their heads with her arms. The father leaned forward, his voice trembling. "That's them. That has to be them." Daniel kept his eyes on the mirror. "How can you be sure?" "They're the only ones who would follow us through a storm like this," the father whispered. "They don't stop. They don't give up." The lights grew closer, too fast, too direct. Not a lost driver, not a random car, someone hunting. Daniel's pulse pounded in his ears. He knew the stretch of highway well, long, isolated, minimal traffic in weather like this. Perfect terrain for someone to trap a fleeing family. Shadow barked, sharp and explosive as the vehicle crept even closer, its silhouette becoming clearer. A black SUV. Menacing. Heavy. Wrong. Daniel took a slow breath and tightened his grip on the wheel. "Okay, everyone listen to me. You're going to be fine, but I need you quiet and still." The rain hammered harder, drumming on the roof like 1,000 frantic hands. The wipers struggled to keep the windshield clear, the storm swallowing everything except the headlights creeping nearer and nearer. The SUV was now close enough for Daniel to see its front grille through the blur of rain, and close enough that Shadow's growl deepened into a warning that vibrated through the entire car. "They're trying to see inside," the father whispered, eyes wide with dread. Daniel flicked a switch, darkening the back seat area. "No one sees you now." The SUV suddenly sped up, closing the gap. Daniel felt a jolt of alarm. They weren't just following. They were preparing to box him in. Shadow barked furiously, slamming his paws against the dashboard, teeth bared in the direction of the SUV. Daniel muttered under his breath, "Not tonight. Not with innocent people in my back seat." He hit the accelerator. The patrol car surged forward. The SUV followed. The chase had begun. The patrol car shot forward, tires splashing through deep puddles as Daniel pushed the engine harder than he liked. The storm clawed at the windows, wind howling like it wanted to tear the world apart, but none of it compared to the surge of adrenaline crashing through his veins. Behind him, the black SUV accelerated. Shadow braced his front paws against the dashboard, barking with raw urgency. His eyes never left the mirror. His instincts screamed danger, and Daniel trusted those instincts more than anything. "Hold on," Daniel shouted, gripping the wheel. The children whimpered, clutching their mother as she wrapped her arms around them. The father leaned forward, staring at the predator-like glow of the SUV's headlights closing in. "They're not going to stop," he whispered, voice shaking. "They're going to ram us." Daniel considered the possibility. The storm had emptied the highway. No witnesses, no traffic. If the men in that SUV were desperate, reckless, or under orders, they could try anything. "Shadow, stay alert," Daniel muttered. The dog barked once, sharp. "I'm ready." The SUV lurched forward, its headlights blinding in the mirror. Daniel swerved, narrowly avoiding a direct hit as the vehicle swiped dangerously close to the patrol car's rear bumper. The impact didn't land, but it was a warning. A message. "We're coming." The rain thickened, a wall of water pouring from the heavens. Visibility dropped to nearly nothing. Daniel could barely see the road lines, relying on instinct and training as he maneuvered through the storm. Shadow growled, pacing in the front seat, the tension in his body like a coiled spring. Every bump, every shake made him more restless. "Officer, please," the mother cried, her voice trembling. "Don't let them take us. They'll hurt the kids." Daniel's jaw clenched. "I'm not letting anyone hurt you. Not while you're in my car." But the SUV wasn't giving up. It pulled to the side, trying to overtake them. Daniel's heart hammered as he realized what they were attempting. They wanted to force him off the road, not on his watch. He floored the accelerator. The engine roared. Shadow barked wildly as the SUV crept closer on the left, its dark figure almost invisible through the sheets of rain. Daniel yanked the wheel right, cutting onto a narrower service road. Branching off the highway, the SUV skidded, overshot the turn, and swerved wildly before regaining control. Daniel didn't wait. He took the winding side road at full speed. Mud splashed, tires groaned. The storm grew heavier. For a moment, just a moment, there was no vehicle behind them. Only the storm, only darkness, only breathing. Shadow exhaled sharply, his body still rigid. Daniel checked the mirror again. For 10 seconds. Nothing. Then, headlights appeared again. Closer, stronger, more determined. Daniel felt his stomach drop. "They found us again." Shadow barked, teeth bared. The chase wasn't over. It was just beginning. Daniel's heart pounded as the headlights reappeared, carving through the rain like twin blades. Whoever was in that SUV wasn't giving up, not until they reclaimed the family huddled in his back seat. The narrow service road wound through thick woods, the trees bending violently under the storm's wrath. It was risky terrain, but it offered one advantage: cover. "Shadow," Daniel whispered. "This might get rough." The dog responded with a low, rumbling growl that vibrated through the car. The SUV surged closer. Daniel spotted a small clearing ahead, a maintenance turnout used by road crews. He made a split-second decision. "We're stopping," he said, gripping the wheel. "Stay down, all of you." The father's eyes widened. "Stop? Are you crazy? They'll—" "We don't have a choice," Daniel replied. "I can't outdrive them forever on mud and gravel." He swerved into the clearing, braking hard. The patrol car skidded to a halt. Rain hammered the roof. The mother clutched her children, whispering that everything would be okay even though her voice trembled. Shadow leapt into a ready stance, muscles taut, eyes locked on the road's entrance. Daniel unholstered his service weapon and stepped out into the storm. Cold rain lashed his face immediately, but he held firm, planting his boots into the mud. Shadow jumped out beside him, fur soaked, growled deep enough to shake the air. The SUV slowed at the edge of the clearing. Its headlights glared through the rain. Unmoving, silent, watching. Daniel raised his voice. "This is Officer Daniel Reed with the County Sheriff's Department. Step out of the vehicle with your hands where I can see them." Nothing. The SUV engine hummed. Shadow's growl intensified. Daniel took one step forward. "This is your final warning." The SUV door swung open. A tall man climbed out, face hidden under a hood, rain dripping off his jacket. He didn't raise his hands, didn't respond, didn't hesitate. Instead, he took one step toward Daniel. Shadow barked viciously, lunging until Daniel held out an arm to steady him. "I said stop," Daniel shouted. The man paused, but only for a second. When he lifted his head, Daniel saw it. Cold, empty eyes. Eyes that belonged to someone who didn't fear consequences. He spoke barely above. The storm. "Give them back." Daniel tightened his grip on his weapon. That's not happening. Another car door opened. Another hooded figure stepped out. Shadow's snarl rose like thunder. The storm raged around them, but the real danger wasn't the rain. It was standing 20 feet away and coming closer. The wind roared like a living creature, bending the trees and hurling sheets of rain across the clearing. Shadow's growls cut through the noise like a blade, warning Daniel that the threat was inches from exploding. Inside the patrol car, the family huddled together, trembling as the hooded men stepped closer. The boy whimpered. The little girl buried her face against her mother's soaked blanket. Daniel stood between them and death itself. The first hooded man smirked, rain dripping off his chin. "They stole something that belongs to us," he shouted over the storm. "Hand them over, officer. We'll be on our way." Daniel kept his gun steady. "You're not taking anyone." The second man cracked his knuckles. "We weren't asking." Shadow lunged, teeth bared, a snarl ripping through his throat. Daniel tightened his stance, adrenaline surging through him. But he needed answers, and he needed them now. He backed toward the patrol car, opening the door just enough to speak without exposing the family. "Tell me everything," he demanded. "Now." The mother's face was pale, soaked, but her eyes held a quiet fire. "They're not just smugglers," she whispered. "They're part of something bigger." The father wiped rain from his forehead, his hands shaking. "They run the shipments. Weapons, drugs, and people, all of it. They use the warehouse as a distribution point." Daniel's throat tightened. He already suspected it, but hearing it confirmed sparked a fury he rarely let surface. "We found out by accident," the father continued. "One night, a crate fell off a forklift. We saw what was inside." The mother squeezed his hand, finishing for him. "Two girls, young, terrified. They begged us not to leave them." Daniel felt the world tilt. It was worse than he imagined. The father swallowed hard. "We helped them escape, hid them, gave them a chance to run before calling for help. But someone saw," the mother said, "and once they knew we helped those girls—" She shook her head, voice breaking. "They said they'd kill us, kill the kids, make an example." A crack of thunder shook the ground. Shadow jerked his head toward the SUV, barking savagely. Daniel turned back toward the clearing. The hooded men were closer now. Too close. "Officer," the father cried, "if they take us back, we won't survive. None of us will." Daniel looked at the children, two small bodies shaking, eyes wide with terror. He looked at Shadow, ready to die defending strangers. He looked at the men approaching, faces cold, merciless. The mother whispered, "Please, you're the only one who can keep us alive." Daniel exhaled slowly, the weight of the night crashing into him. Then he spoke, voice low and unshakable. "They're not taking you. Not tonight. Not ever." Shadow barked fiercely as if sealing the vow. The truth was out. The danger was real, and the fight was about to begin. The storm howled louder, shaking the trees as if nature itself sensed the danger closing in. The hooded men advanced slowly, confident, deliberate, like predators who believed their prey had nowhere left to run. Inside the patrol car, the children whimpered. The little girl clung to her soaked backpack, her tiny fingers trembling. The boy pressed his face into his father's shoulder, trying to hold back frightened sobs. Shadow heard it. He felt it, and it awakened something primal inside him. The moment Daniel opened the door just enough to check on the family again, Shadow pushed past him, leaping into the back seat. The mother gasped, "Shadow!" But the dog didn't growl at them. He didn't bark. He didn't bare his teeth. Instead, he crawled carefully between the children, pressing his warm, wet body against them both, forming a protective barrier. The boy wrapped his arms around Shadow's neck, burying his face in the dog's fur. The girl held Shadow's paw, as if gripping the only safe thing left in the world. Shadow didn't move, didn't flinch. He lowered his head over their laps, shielding them, guarding them with a steadiness that almost seemed human. Only his ears twitched, tracking the footsteps outside. Daniel felt something twist in his chest. Shadow wasn't just protecting them. He was claiming them as his. "Good boy," Daniel whispered, voice tight with emotion. The father, shaking, touched Shadow's back. "I've never seen a dog do something like this?" Daniel nodded. "Shadow protects innocence. It's what he does." A sharp knock on the patrol car window made everyone jump. One of the hooded men slapped the glass, sneering through the rain. "Last chance, officer. Hand them over." Shadow's growl erupted, deep, ferocious, vibrating through the metal of the car. But he didn't move away from the children. He didn't even look at the man. His eyes stayed fixed on the threat outside, but his body stayed firmly planted in front of the little boy and girl. The man banged harder. The children cried louder. Shadow snapped, teeth flashing for only a second. A warning. Daniel stepped between the man and the car window, gun raised. "Back away, now." The man smirked. Or what? In the back seat, Shadow's growl deepened, deadly, promising. Daniel's voice turned to steel. "Or the next sound you hear won't be thunder." The man hesitated. Just long enough. And Shadow stayed exactly where he was. Against the children, heart beating steady and strong, a wall of courage shielding two small lives from unimaginable terror. The kids held on to him like he was their last hope. Tonight, he was. The storm showed no mercy. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the clearing in violent flashes. Thunder shook the ground beneath Daniel's boots. Rain pounded so hard it felt like the sky itself was falling. But none of it mattered. Not compared to the danger standing only yards away. The hooded men took another step forward. Their boots sank into the mud, their movements slow but certain, as if they already believed the outcome was decided. Daniel's radio crackled faintly, but he didn't reach for it. Backup was too far. The storm was too strong, and this situation was already too far gone. He stood between the patrol car and the men, gun raised, breath steady. "You're not getting near them," he said, voice low and absolute. The first man laughed. Actually laughed. One officer, one dog, 4 people in the back seat. He spread his arms mockingly. "You can't protect them from what's coming. Move aside." Daniel didn't move. Didn't blink. Behind him, Shadow stayed pressed against the children, refusing to leave them even for a second. His growls vibrated through the car like a warning drumbeat. Daniel's mind raced. Not with fear, but clarity. If he turned the family over, if he let criminals drag 2 terrified parents and their innocent kids back into the dark, then everything he stood for, every oath, every promise, every moment of duty would become meaningless. He took a slow breath. This wasn't a standard call anymore. This wasn't procedure. This wasn't training. This was a crossroads, a moment that would define everything. The mother inside the car cried softly. "Officer Reed, please don't let them take us." Daniel closed his eyes for half a second and made his choice. He lifted his radio to his mouth and spoke words he never thought he'd have to say. "Dispatch, this is Officer Reed. I am breaking standard protocol. I have a family in immediate, life-threatening danger. I am invoking protective custody under emergency grounds. Repeat, protective custody. Do not route us back to the station. It's compromised. I need secure backup." Static crackled. Dispatch tried to respond, but the storm interfered. Daniel didn't wait. The hooded men exchanged a glance. "You shouldn't have done that," one hissed. Daniel leveled his gun. "I'll do a lot more if you take another step." The men moved anyway, without hesitation. Daniel fired a warning shot into the mud at their feet. The explosion of sound echoed through the woods, louder than the thunder. Shadow barked so fiercely the windows rattled. The men froze, but only for a moment. One of them reached inside his jacket. Daniel's instincts screamed. Shadow's snarl turned feral. This was it. The moment everything would change. The moment Daniel crossed a line, not out of recklessness but out of humanity. He shouted over the storm. "You want them?" He raised, his gun higher. "You'll have to go through me." And in that second, Daniel knew. There was no going back. The forest seemed to hold its breath. Rain hammered the clearing, lightning tearing jagged scars across the sky, but between Daniel and the hooded men, there was a moment of eerie, terrifying stillness, like the world paused to witness what was about to happen. Then the second SUV door slammed. A third man stepped out, bigger, broader, moving with the confidence of someone who'd broken laws, bones, and souls without losing sleep. He pushed his hood back, revealing a face carved by cruelty, sharp jaw, cold eyes, a scar slicing across his eyebrow. "That's the cop," he growled to the others. "The one who helped the girls escape last month." Daniel froze. "What?" he whispered. The man smirked. "Oh, you didn't know. You've gotten in our way before, Officer Reed. Tonight, that ends." Everything clicked. This wasn't random. This wasn't luck. They'd recognized him, and they wanted revenge. Shadow lunged forward, teeth bared, shaking the patrol car as he snarled, ready to tear through metal to reach the men outside. The children clung to his fur, terrified but finding courage in the way Shadow defied danger with every breath. Daniel steadied himself. "Turn around. Walk away. This is your last warning." The scarred man laughed, a deep, unsettling sound. "You think your badge means something out here?" He snapped his fingers. The other two men spread out, forming a semicircle around Daniel. They moved slowly, deliberately, boots sinking into the mud as the rain poured harder. Shadow barked, loud, sharp, aggressive enough to make even hardened criminals flinch, but not these men. The scarred one leaned forward, voice dripping with threat. "We're taking the family, and we're taking you too." Daniel tightened his grip on his weapon. His breath came slow, controlled. He'd been outnumbered before. Never, with children depending on him, but fear wasn't an option now. Another flash of lightning illuminated the scene. 3 figures advancing, weapons glinting under the storm. "Stay behind me!" Daniel shouted toward the patrol car. Shadow's growl deepened, vibrating through the air. Then he suddenly leapt, slamming his paws against the window, desperate to join the fight. "Stay!" Daniel ordered. Shadow froze, teeth bared, chest heaving. The scarred man lunged first. Daniel fired, not to kill, but to warn, and the bullet hit a fallen tree trunk, sending splinters flying. The men ducked, but didn't stop. They rushed him. Daniel braced himself. But before they reached him, a new sound pierced the storm. Sirens, faint, distant, but getting closer. The men cursed. Shadow barked triumphantly, and Daniel stepped forward, ready for the final clash. The fight wasn't over, but hope had arrived. The sirens grew louder, cutting through the storm like a lifeline. Red and blue lights flickered faintly through the trees, reflecting off the rain-soaked branches. The hooded men froze, their confidence cracking for the first time. The scarred leader snarled, realizing their window was closing. "Move," he barked, but Daniel stepped forward, weapon steady, stance unshakable. "You're not going anywhere." The men hesitated only a fraction of a second. Long enough. Multiple patrol vehicles skidded into the clearing. Officers poured out, weapons raised, shouting commands that echoed through the thunder. The hooded men backed away, hands twitching toward their jackets. Shadow exploded into a frenzy of barking, the sound fierce enough to rattle the windshield. Inside the patrol car, the children peeked up, hope flickering in their frightened eyes. The little girl squeezed Shadow's paw. "Are we safe?" she whispered. Shadow pressed his head gently against her arm, as if saying yes. The scarred man made one last desperate decision. He lunged. Daniel reacted instantly, firing a shot into the mud inches from the man's boots. Officers from the arriving units swarmed in, tackling all three men to the ground with swift, brutal precision. Shouts, handcuffs, metal clinking, threats dissolving into angry, powerless curses. The danger was over. Finally. Daniel exhaled, the weight of the night crashing into him all at once. Rain mixed with sweat on his forehead as he lowered his weapon. Officers moved around him, securing the men, reading rights, radioing commands. The clearing buzzed with sudden controlled chaos. But Daniel had only one place to go. He jogged back to the patrol car and opened the door. The family stared at him, shivering, exhausted, but alive. The mother burst into tears. The father covered his face with his hands, shoulders shaking as weeks of fear finally broke. The children didn't move. They clung to Shadow, burying their faces in the dog's soaked fur. And Shadow, finally calm, pressed himself even closer, refusing to leave them until he felt them breathe easier. Daniel knelt beside them. "It's over. You're safe now." The little boy looked up, tears streaking down his cheeks. "Shadow saved us," he whispered. "He didn't let them take us." Daniel smiled softly, placing a hand on the dog's head. "He saved all of us." Paramedics approached, offering blankets and medical checks. The family stepped out slowly, still gripping Shadow's fur as if afraid he might disappear. Officers carried the criminals away. The storm began to ease, and in the center of it all stood a canine dog and the family he refused to let die. Morning arrived slowly, as if the sky itself needed time to recover from the night before. The storm had passed, leaving the forest damp and silent, the air thick with the smell of wet earth. Golden sunlight filtered through the trees, casting long beams across the clearing that only hours ago had been a battleground. Daniel stood beside the patrol car, arms crossed, watching as paramedics finished examining the family. The mother sat wrapped in a warm blanket, her daughter curled on her lap. The father spoke quietly with an officer, holding his son close. Shadow sat between the children, his fur still damp, but his posture proud, steadfast as ever. Every so often he nudged the girl's hand or pressed his head gently against the boy's arm, checking on them like a guardian refusing to clock out. Daniel smiled at the sight. The paramedic approached him. "They're shaken, but they'll recover. You got to them in time." Daniel nodded but didn't answer immediately. His eyes lingered on the family. 4 people who had been hunted, terrified, and nearly torn apart by the night. People who would have vanished without a trace if he and Shadow hadn't crossed that highway at the right moment, or if he hadn't made that one decision. The captain walked over, removing his cap. "Reed, that was one hell of a situation." Daniel waited, unsure if this was praise or reprimand. "You broke protocol," the captain continued. "Went off route, engaged without backup, put yourself in the crosshairs of men tied to federal-level crimes." Daniel braced himself. Then the captain placed a hand on his shoulder. "And because you did, 4 innocent people are alive." Relief washed through Daniel like a warm tide. Shadow gave a small approving bark as if echoing the sentiment. Later, as officers prepared to transport the arrested men and escort the family to a secure safe house, the little girl tugged gently on Daniel's sleeve. He knelt down. "You okay, sweetheart?" She nodded, then pointed at Shadow. "Can he come with us? Just for a little while?" Shadow tilted his head, ears perked, staring at her with gentle eyes Daniel had only seen him reserve for the most vulnerable. Daniel chuckled, scratching behind the dog's ears. "Shadow has to stay with me, but you'll see him again, I promise." The girl's smile trembled but held. "He's our angel." The mother approached, tears glistening. "Thank you," she whispered. "You didn't just save us. You believed us." Daniel shook his head. "You saved yourselves when you ran. Shadow and I just helped you finish it." As the family was guided toward a waiting vehicle, the boy turned back and waved. Shadow barked softly in return, tail swishing once. Daniel watched them go, the morning sun breaking fully over the horizon. One decision, a single moment of instinct, compassion, and courage, had changed an entire family's future. Shadow pressed against Daniel's leg, looking up proudly. "Yeah, buddy," Daniel whispered. "We did good." And together they walked toward whatever came next.